Welcome into the September 27th episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Some updates from Leafs practice today, including some line juggling ahead of Wednesday's preseason game against the Montreal Canadiens. And Dave, we're going to play some co-sign, no sign. And with that one, we're going to debate whether or not Denis Malgin will be a value signing for the Maple Leafs this season. All that and more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now catch us up live on video. Go search for us on YouTube, Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe and get new daily content every day, Monday to Friday, all Leafs, all the time. Lots of stuff to go over today. There's some updates from camp, David. There's been some new lines that kind of are circulating the webs about what the lines could look like potentially for the game upcoming against the Montreal Canadiens. What's going on, though, pal? Did you get a chance to watch that Jays game last night by chance?
Oh, you know it. The Yankees, man. The Josh and I are just playing like the Yankees are playing checkers and the Jays are playing chess. No, we do not want Aaron Judge coming up in the top of the 10th to hit. And then the Yankees like, nah, we got Vladdy. We can pitch to him.
Think about the star power, and honestly, that was a playoff-esque atmosphere, playoff-like game last night. Jays walk off the Yankees 3-2. Bottom of the 10th to walk it off in extras. Vladdy with a nice little single out to left field, scoring Kevin Biggio. But tonight, my guy, Auston Matthews enters the Dome. He'll be throwing out the ceremonial first pitch at Jays Yanks tonight. And think about the star power that's going to be at that game. Because not only is Matthews going to be there, you know that means that he'll have a couple of his buddies. A couple of the Maple Leafs will be there to take in the game. So I would guess maybe Marner's going to be around. His best buddy, Michael Bunting, probably will be kind of hanging around there. Maybe Morgan Rielly. And then, of course, you've got Vladdy, Bo, all the star power in the Blue Jays. And Aaron Judge could hit the home run ball that would break the record of Roger Maris that has been so long since somebody has been able to hit 61 home runs in a baseball season. And, I mean, it could happen, and it could happen with Matthews in the building tonight. I think it's kind of cool.
I will actually be in the building myself.
Oh, look at that. Big D hitting up the Jays game tonight. How many loony dogs are you going to down?
Oh, are we putting an over-under on that? This is my first
Will
ever
you-
Looney Dogs.
Will you average at least a dog an inning?
No, definitely not.
You won't down 9 dogs? That's not that is a lot for regular, but for the event where it's, you just do it because it's a buck. You try and see how many you can consume, no?
Maybe if I starve myself, I can. Thing is, like, I'm not a big hot dog. I do like hot dogs. I just don't like. I'm not one of those guys like, yo, just toss me like a few. Like, I don't eat them in succession.
Can you do me a favor?
Okay.
Since they're only $1, right? They're only $1. Can you do the dog in the beer dunk and try it and see how it tastes? Just do it. Just try it for me. Come on. Or maybe the straw. Remember the hot dog straw that one guy had in New York?
Oh man, I tried so hard not keep my stomach from turning. I was gross.
Gotta try it. You gotta try it for me, and I want a full breakdown tomorrow on the show.
Okay. For you and for the lovely listeners, because you've already now put me on the spot, I will give it a shot.
Love it. That's why you're my guy, Mr. Dave Morassutti. It does bring the question, though, because a lot of people want to go to that game. And I know we're talking baseball right now. I'll link it back to hockey in a sec. But a lot of people want to go to that game because they want to witness history. But also, apparently, this baseball that could potentially be hit, number 61, which would be the first home run that he would hit, is worth upwards of $500,000. If he happens to hit 2 home runs in the next 2 games, that second home run he hits, home run number 62 on the year, is reportedly being offered in the $2 million range to whoever catches that baseball. Where are you sitting, David? And if it's not in the outfield, what are you doing?
I tried to get outfield seats, not because of that reason, but because I'm going with a bunch of people and they got kids that don't go to Jays games a whole lot. It's been a little while for them. So I'm like, oh, we'll try to get outfield seats. And then I kind of over promise and under deliver on that because I go and like,
I would imagine those are the seats that are crazy right now.
yes,
Like typically, I bet you outfield seats are more money than like those than what's that lady? Like home plate lady
lady.
seats next to her would be cheaper than in the outfield for these next 2 games.
Yeah, because like, and the reason why we're bringing this up and it's a big deal is because this could potentially be one of the other than the Jays winning the World Series and winning the first World Series at home, there hasn't been a lot of historical moments in Toronto when you really think about it, like from like a baseball standpoint. We've seen it with the Raptors and what they've done, and we've seen the Leafs, have history of their own. But like the Jays, other than the World Series, haven't had a whole lot in terms of historical moments. So this would be a huge thing if this were to happen in Toronto. And I
Yeah.
heard that there was like one guy who bought a bunch of seats in the outfield just for himself.
Yeah, but people are going to go and sit there. It's not. What's he going to say? No, you can't sit in any of these seats. I mean, come on. People are just going to sit there anyway. Plus, you got to chase down for that ball. I'm curious what you think the NHL equivalent, like, would it be like when Ovi scores number 895? Would that be the equivalent, I guess, of what the significance of this home run ball would be?
I don't know if that would be it because this is just an American League record.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
not the MLB record for in a single season. Like I'm trying to think what would be
Well,
the equivalent might be if like a player
it
ended up
depends if
getting
you believe in it depends if you believe in the steroid era or not, realistically.
this is also very true. Maybe
Yeah.
this is like the next player to score 70 goals in a
Okay.
season because it hasn't been done in such a long time. That could potentially be the next like the equivalent to me because like yeah we haven't seen this.
Or a 150-point player, perhaps.
Yeah, that's another one right there because like we haven't seen it since when did Maris hit the 61 home runs?
Oh, he didn't. Roger Maris, it's been like
Yeah.
50 years since that, no? Roger Maris,
Yeah, I
over
was trying to
100.
remember. It's around the 60s, I believe, or 50s, 60s. So like that's such a long time ago. It's like
Yeah,
it's
1961. He hit 61 and 61. That was it.
right. So and yeah, if you're talking about McGuire technically having the record of 70, and then Barry Bonds, yeah, I get that point. But yeah, for me, it would probably be an NHL player hitting seven, no, scoring 70 goals because we just how you don't hasn't been done in such a long time. 60 has been done. Like people would have said 60. 60 has been done
No,
more recently than 70.
yeah, like it was done 10 years ago, and then it was done, a couple years before that. And 60 goal scorers, yeah, it's difficult. And Auston Matthews was the first guy to do it in a decade, but we're talking about something that hasn't been done in the American League since 1961, dude.
Right.
Like legitimately, like what 60 years ago. It hasn't been done in 60 years. So yeah, I don't even know what the NHL equivalent would be. I thought like maybe Ovi if he when he breaks Gretzky's record, but that might even be a little bit more special just because that's an overall record, I guess, and one that no one thought could possibly be broken. Although after 60 years, I'm not sure how many people sat there and said, "Oh yeah, Maris's record, someone's gonna break that soon." But here we are. It potentially could be broken in the city of Toronto with Auston Matthews in the building. Well, since he'll be doing the ceremonial first pitch. Just curious, if you did get that ball, like, would you hold out for the 2 million that's being offered, or would you give it back to Aaron Judge for whatever he's offering, which it doesn't. I mean, maybe it probably won't be close to the $2 million mark. But like, what would you do? Because there's a lot of people in the States saying, "Oh, it's a Canadian. They'll just give it back to the team. They'll give it to the Yankees for like season tickets and signed jerseys and signed baseballs and bats and all that." I'm like, not a chance. I'm holding out for either I'm going to get the $2 million from some random collector who's put that kind of cash on the table, or you, Mr. Steinbrenner slash Aaron Judge, will need to pay up if you want that baseball back in your hands. No chance I'd be giving that thing up for anything less than $2 million. Not a chance.
I see somebody would push the envelope past the $2 million, given I'm Canadian, and being like, "You're gonna have to work a little extra hard on this because and are we talking about 2 million American?
I believe it is an American
That
dollar.
that's a significant factor when you look at the exchange rate there. Just gonna point that out. Um, but I also just this was brought up when Pujols hit 700. I think it was when he passed A-Rod.
Yes.
They were gonna try to get the baseball back, but he actually let the people keep it. Partly because I think he realized, nah, I'm gonna hit 700. You can keep
Well, it was sentimental to the other
yeah,
to the people who caught it. There was, like, some sentimental
with
story
the
to
family,
it,
yeah.
and yeah, and, like, their grandfather or something, so they let him keep it, but, yeah, we'll see if it happens, but if it does happen, the city of Toronto, with Matthews in the building, I think that'd be kinda cool. Um, Ovechkin, by the way, 890 or 700, and 80 he's 115 goals away, so he's at 780. Yeah, 780 he's at right now, I think. 115 away. He's got 4 years left on his deal. He'd have to average about 22 and a half goals over the next 4 years in order to break Wayne Gretzky's record. That
You
might come
stay
up a little bit later. Don't answer it. It might come up a little bit later, my friend.
home.
It just might. But before we get into all of that, David, we got to talk about one of today's show sponsors. And, well, it's one of our best friends, our guys from betonline.ag. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. It has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. And there's lots of new props and odds out there for the NHL. If you missed yesterday's episode, we talked about one that we really, really liked, an under in the total points market. You could definitely go check out Bet Online right now before the season starts and try and make that wager if you feel that you want to roll with us here on Locked On Leafs. But go check out yesterday's episode if you want to see what that play was. We'll be doing some more plays throughout the next couple of weeks as we'll try and address the futures market and how you can maybe prosper with the Maple Leafs if they can prosper this season. So a lot more of that content to come a little bit later on over the next couple of weeks at BetOnline. It is where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got Dave Morassutti here. We're the host of Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. Shows coming at you each and every morning, Monday through Friday. And on today's episode, we're just going to give some updates from practice that went down on Monday. So, a couple of quick things. Jake Muzzin was skating, as was Pierre Engvall. So I guess both of those guys skating is a relatively good thing. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
Oh, it's encouraging that they're at least back on the ice. And, we know that Engvall's timeline was early October, if I'm not mistaken. So he's
Yeah.
working towards that.
October
Muzzin,
3rd. October 3rd is going to be reevaluated.
right. So it's good to see that Engvall is back in skating. Muzzin, it's working towards him getting back. I'm curious to see how it changes over the next few days and whether he's not going to play on Wednesday. Are they going to just take this very cautious and this very slow? That's something I'm very curious about.
I just sent you an update, I guess, what Sheldon Keefe had to say about Jake Muzzin and the injury. If you want to pull that up here for our YouTube audience, they can read the tweet from good old David Alter, one of the best daily reporters of the Maple Leafs. But he came out and he said, Sheldon Keefe was speaking and said, quote, "There were a couple of things that were bugging him leading up to camp." Actually, can you zoom in slightly on that, bud?
Yeah,
My eyes are deceiving
my
me.
Chrome is not very good on this. I will fix that.
We'll pull it up on mine. It's all good. There were a couple of little things that were bugging him leading up to camp that really weren't prevalent all summer long. But as things ramped up here, there were a couple of things that were on his radar. But he was feeling good enough to go, but now not so much. It's not related to anything he went through last season, just something he's dealing with right now. Whatever that means. So apparently he showed up to camp. He was feeling good. And then I guess like the next day, he was like, you know what? Actually, I slept funny. I fell asleep on the lazy boy. And now my back's all jacked up. I just need a couple of days to, get my body feeling right. And that's where we seem to be with
or he went and played some golf and he's like me and maybe tried to show off a little bit on the golf course and just back.
Tried to put a little, tried to maybe extend his drive an extra 15 yards and oh god, felt that one. You think
It is very easy to hurt yourself playing golf. People will joke about it being a non-athletic sport.
I don't know. Apparently Martin's a stick. Like I was listening to they think they put out like a TikTok or a video or some kind at the Leafs golf event last week. Apparently Muzz is one of the better players on the team. Yeah, two of the better players on the team. So I mean, it's possible, but he sounds like a guy who knows what he's up to on the golf course. But you never know. You never know. Because, yeah, you're right. Monday would have been the time they were out on the golf course. Tuesday, they showed up for practice or for media day and said, I'm all good. I'm all good. And then maybe he woke up because it's usually that day after where you typically feel it a little bit, right? That day, not like the next day, but like that following day. And maybe that is what happened. Maybe there was a little tweakage at the Leafs charity golf tournament. Anyways, he is back on the ice skating, which is a good thing. Hopefully he can return and get into a couple of these preseason games before all said and done. That being said, the fact that Rasmus Sandin still is not there, I have lost my prediction. Because I said last week, I believed he would be here by Tuesday. It is now Tuesday morning, and Rasmus Sandin has still not signed a contract, despite there being ample opportunity for him. All these people who say he just wants opportunity, it's not about the money. The opportunity's here now, man. So what do you mean you just want opportunity? Clearly, there is a monetary value that Sandin has out there that he wants before coming. It's not the opportunity. Yes, he wants top 4 minutes, but he also wants to be paid like a top 4 defenseman or, a not necessarily top 4 defenseman, but wants to be paid accordingly, according to, I guess, what he believes he should be paid, which is different from, it seems like, what the Maple Leafs wish to pay him. I believe there was a update there.
Oh, I got it.
All right, let's bring it up because there was an update, and this was from Chris Johnston, right?
Yeah.
So Chris Johnston put this in his newsletter that he does each week. Says it's believed the Leafs and agent Louis Gross have focused recent discussions on 1 and 2 year extensions. The Sandin camp has sought a 1-year contract above his qualifying offer, which was $875,000, or a 2-year term north of the $1.4 million AAV taken by teammate Timothy Liljegren back in June. So, I mean, this is news that we've kind of always assumed, and we've known that these contract offers have been sitting there. If you want to take $875 or $900,000, that's what they're offering you on a 1-year deal. If you want a multi-year deal, You're getting the same deal that Timothy Liljegren got. You're matching contracts. That's the way it's going to go. Why he keeps digging his heels in, I do not know. There is a fractured relationship between Sandin, Louis Gross, and this and Leafs management, which stems back a couple of seasons. And I wonder if now Sandin's like, look, you guys have overlooked me, passed me up, and haven't given me opportunities for years now. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm digging in on this one. And he seems like he's willing to hold out as long as possible. We'll see who blinks first.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a bit of a personal. There maybe Sandin is feeling slighted. I get it has not been a smooth past 2 years from him, but you just have to find a way to get yourself on the ice to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Like you can't do it sitting at home, and it's just and the Leafs right now. I think Kyle Dubas has kind of learned his lesson a little bit about these standoffs. He's not going to cave. The only thing that maybe will help Sandin and his party is that the longer this drags into the regular season, the bigger problem it causes the Leafs, because the prorated salary will also make his cap hit go up. Because remember when Nylander signed his deal, well, people were like, well, he's making close to $7 million. Why is his cap hit $10 million? Well, because when you sign a guy late into the season, it's it's prorated for the rest of the year. So what he's actually being paid in salary gets his cap hit gets inflated because they have to prorate it for the entire season. So that's the one thing that Sandin is going to hold out hope for. But I just think it's such a misguided approach for me, because you see other players that have dug their heels on contracts, and a lot of them have legitimate reason to, right? I
Yeah.
think of like a Jason Robertson in Dallas right now. That's the one to me is like, I can see why Robertson would feel one way, because we've heard what ownership has said about contracts, versus Rasmus Sandin, who frankly just hasn't done much the last 2 years. And I just feel like somebody's just got to get it to. The interesting thing here is William Nylander said he talked to him on Friday. And I'm really hoping Nylander just like, I've been through this. You don't want to do this. Now, Nylander got a 6-year deal out of it.
Yeah.
If I'm saying, just take the 1 year. I understand that things can go wrong on a 1-year deal. You get hurt, it affects your next contract. But right now, the leverage is not in your hands.
Right.
And if I'm the Leafs, you let him sit as long as he wants to sit. You let him be the one to kind of come to you a little bit, because the opportunity you said is there for him to play, for him to at least get opportunity to play higher up in the lineup. I don't think it's that anymore. I just think there's other reasons on top of it that, frankly, I don't know what the Leafs solution is to it.
It seems like it's like a money slash pride thing at this point. Like he doesn't want to take one on the chin by the Leafs again. So he's like, I'm done kind of, bowing down to you. It's time you bow down to me for once. It feels like that's the situation they're in with Rasmus Sandin. And, for a kid who's played 88 games in the NHL, I just don't think you have the cachet to do that. They don't owe you anything. Like they really don't at the end of the day. You haven't done nearly enough in this league to prove that you're indispensable. So to be holding out like this, to be missing this, quality time for you to develop, for you to come in and get an opportunity to skate in some top four, get some top 4 minutes, skate alongside a Morgan Rielly or a TJ Brody or, whoever it might be, and just not being in camp for all this time, I think is just going to set him back if he ultimately does blink and come back to Toronto. But I don't know, man. We'll see what ends up happening here. It's definitely a weird situation, but we're talking about a guy, 88 games, 28 points, and he's looking for a big payday. It's just not going to come. It's just
He's
not going
looking
to
for a
come.
bigger payday than Timothy Liljegren, who's actually had a bigger track record of, at least we've seen more from him than we have seen from Sandy.
Yeah. Yep. And Sandin had the injury last year too. So it's not even like you can say, oh, he's been healthy. Well, there's been injuries there. And even the season before, injuries. He played a grand total of 10 games the season before, the COVID year. Um, and then last year, limited to just 51 by both injuries and kind of being in and out of the lineup. So it's a guy who, over the course of the last 2 seasons since COVID hit, has only played 61 pro hockey games. Like and you're gonna and now you're going to try and hold out and potentially miss some more valuable games at 22 years old. You've already missed a lot of time, man. You got to take this one on the chin and live to fight another day, and maybe get back into this fight next year. That's what I believe Sandin should do. But that's his prerogative. We'll see what ends up happening. All right, really quickly, why don't we pull up the lines to actually, you know what? Let's take a quick break. We'll take a break. When we get back, we'll pull up the practice lines from today, or from yesterday, rather, and the ones that we believe will be close to the lines that ended up playing in Wednesday's preseason game. So we'll be right back. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Practice was underway today after an off day on Sunday. So why don't we take a look at kind of the new line figurations that were sent out today by Kyle Dubas. And they look a little bit, or Kyle Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, they look a little bit more familiar there, don't they, Dave? At least up front.
Yeah, you're seeing half, I would say half Leafs, half Marlies in terms of how the forward lines are. But yeah, the top two, you see Matthews, Bunting, and Martin, and you're just like, yes. Good old faithful, as they say. Like that's what you kind of hope for. And then you see the second line, you're just like, Malgin, Tavares, and Nylander, huh?
Yeah, what'd you think of that one?
It didn't surprise me just based on what Malgin did on Saturday. It's not just the goal he scored. If you really watch that game, he was putting forth a big effort, and he's clearly trying to prove something in this camp. So I wasn't surprised to see that he was getting that bump up. My question here is, how much is this is just a potential experiment, or is this really Denis Malgin's job really to try to seize right now? I don't think it is right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if Sheldon Keefe is kind of implying that to him in a way.
Yeah, I think there's probably like a happy medium there where, it's not necessarily his job to lose. I don't think he's the front runner by any means quite yet, but they're giving him a look and giving him an opportunity to establish himself as that, right? He looked really, really good with Willie the other game against Ottawa. And for all intents and purposes, like Denis Malgin's a different player today than he was 2 years ago when he was in Toronto, right? Like there's a really, really good piece written by Haley Salvian in The Athletic that was put out yesterday that kind of, dictates exactly what Malgin went through over the last couple of seasons since leaving Toronto, going to Europe, playing in the Swiss League, becoming a point per game player, becoming the guy, and learning how to kind of, develop into a scorer and a playmaker and a top six man ultimately, and now is trying to translate that success back into the NHL. So, it's there on tape. You can see it when you go and you watch some of his games last year in the Swiss League, like last season. Let me look up his stats really quickly. So his first season in the Swiss League, so like the COVID year, I guess. Yeah, the COVID year, 42 points in 45 games. And then last season, his second full year in the Swiss League, 52 points in 48 games. So over a point per game. And then had 18 points in 17 playoff games as well for the Zurich Lions. So, there is a lot of success here. A lot of success here over the last couple of seasons at the pro level. It's not the NHL level, but it is the pro level. And I know, ice surfaces are different, so he's going to have to adjust back to playing a North American style game. Sometimes it doesn't translate as well. But I think that they're going to give him ample opportunity, and he's going to be one of those guys that will be vying for that top 6 role right there next to Tavares and Nylander. And looks like he's going to be given a great opportunity here in this next game against Montreal if that's how things shake out for Wednesday.
Yeah, and Sheldon Keefe said after practice that he said that every time Malgin had the puck on his stick, something good seemed to happen with it.
Yeah.
Now, that's good because you want to, when you're in a top 6 role, you want to be able to show you can do things offensively. But we also know that Sheldon Keefe wants to make sure that they're not just a one-way player, especially if he's considered the third guy in that line, on that line. He's going to have to do more than just show what he can do with the puck. So I guess this is kind of going up against Montreal. That's what I'm going to be watching for the most. What's his play like without the puck
Yeah.
in these situations? Because it's easy to be the offensive guy, but then when you're struggling in your own end, it's not always going to go well for you offensively. You got to show how you can do other things to be productive. And so that's what I'm going to be looking at when he does play on that line on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. It's not necessarily like, don't look at the stat sheet at the end of the night. Dig into the tape and see what he looked like his off puck play. That's what's going to be kind of important, and I guarantee you that's more so what the coaching staff will be looking for, as opposed to whether or not he found the back of the net. Yeah. So outside of that, just some guys who are vying for that 4th line position, I suppose. Clifford, Minten, and Anderson as the 3rd line. Minten getting some looks here, and actually after practice, Sheldon Keefe had some words, said some nice things about Fraser Minten as well. So looks like Minten, the Leafs 2nd round pick, seems to be kind of showing off for the new coach in Toronto. Well, I guess he's not new, but the new draft pick for the current coach in Toronto. It's his new player. So yeah, I guess that's a good sign. He said he's gotten better every day since he's been here. And Tavares said he's a very heavy player, smart, just a joy to be around. I think he's a tremendous kid, a great kid. I think we have a good one in him. So you're hearing some good things from the captain, the coach. We know his game is very responsible 2-way. So getting an opportunity to be, in between Anderson and Kyle Clifford, I think is a really good opportunity for him, I suppose, to learn from some other guys who play more of a defensive style game. Defensively, the only thing that really sticks out here is Jordie Benn alongside Morgan Rielly. With the injuries, are they trying to get a look at Jordie Benn as a top pair guy here, Dave?
I mean, this I'm trying not to overthink this too much because this is probably just a trial run, obviously, because Brody was moved into group 2 for
Yes.
practices. I guess so. You want to see how a guy like Jordie Benn, because look, yeah, 1 or 2 injuries, especially on the right side, Jordie Benn could potentially be a top 4 defenseman for this team, just like Victor Mete could be. So I can see why they're doing it. Some like I obviously this is not going to be something we look forward to starting opening night unless catastrophic injuries happen. That's where I am on that.
Let me be clear. I am not advocating, nor do I think that Riley Benn will be the number one. I know we're gonna get in the comments. Oh, Ben stinks. Blah blah blah. I don't think this is gonna happen, but I do think it's notable that Ben is getting a run with Morgan Rielly just in case injuries pile up. They want to see, all right, what does this pairing look like? That's what the preseason's all about, right? These exhibition games, they're all about just getting a look at different pairings, different groupings, and seeing if somebody can build some sort of chemistry together and see if people can play off each other well. And that's all this really is at the end of the day. And Ben's a guy who's going to be vying for an opportunity this week in camp over the next couple of weeks with the injuries to Muzzin and Liljegren, and without Rasmus Sandin there, Ben could very well be on this opening night roster. Who are you going to put up on that top pair with Rielly if you decide to pair up Muzzin and Brody? Like it very well could be either Riley Benn or Rielly and Justin Hall. So I don't believe, nor do I want it to be true, where Rielly and Benn are playing together, but it's a possibility. And I mean, it makes sense, I guess, to give it a go here in preseason.
The only other reason why it makes more sense is because Jordie Benn is the guy you expect to stay back, and you can give Morgan Rielly the green light to kind of do what he needs to do, because we're not expecting Jordie Benn to just freelance and decide, hey, I'm going to take this puck up on the rush. That's not Jordie Benn. That's Morgan Rielly's job. So I guess maybe that's also why, out of all the guys in that group one, Ben is the likely guy to get there, to be in that position to play with Rielly, because he'll probably know better than the other guys what Rielly needs in his partner, which is just fall back in case something happens.
Safe, high floor type of guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Defensive defenseman. He can kind of just hang back, and you're right. So we'll see what it looks like. Outside of that, just some more depth defensemen looking like Dahlstrom and Mete, two other guys vying for, one of those depth spots, the 6, 7, 8 role on the Maple Leafs blue line. And then Matt Murray going to make his first start on Wednesday. He seemed pretty excited, actually, too. He was speaking with the media about what it's going to be like putting on a Maple Leafs jersey for the first time in a game, right? Like he's worn one, I guess, in practice and for some photos and stuff. But now he said, yeah, it'd be cool for sure, but I'm trying to make the most of it and prepare for game one of the season. That's the first step towards that, is playing in tomorrow's game. So Matt Murray going to get his opportunity as well. Well, we'll get an opportunity. Do you feel like there's any maybe we can get into that tomorrow, actually. If there's any pressure on Murray to perform coming off of Samsonov's really impressive performance in game one, that's a question I'll hang on to for tomorrow's show, David. I think we'll push cosign, no sign to tomorrow as well. We kind of ended up going a little long there on a couple of the other
Goddamn Rasmus Sandin, which was actually going to be one of my cosign no signs. So it's a good thing I'll have to go back to the drawing board for that.
Exactly. I knew there was so I didn't do a Sandy one because I figured we would get there, but I did have a Malgin one though. So we'll pick this conversation back up tomorrow. We'll tee up the game, Montreal and Toronto. So Matt Murray making his first start as a Maple Leaf in preseason play. We'll see, is there any pressure on Matt Murray tomorrow? How do you feel it'll go down tomorrow? We'll answer those questions, and we'll play a little cosign, no sign tomorrow as well. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like and a comment down below as well if you're here on YouTube. We'll be back with an episode tomorrow, but until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.